there is a wake up happening. There's no question about it. I mean, 21 years ago, when I went into a psychic to see if she would pick up this presence I was feeling around me for a year before, right from the start, when this psychic starts coming out with the stuff, when I'm a television presenter at the time, I'm going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets and write books and do all this stuff. And I'm thinking, whoa, what's all this about? But something inside me said, go with it. This is right. Go with it. But right at the start, it was the theme of what I called my first book, actually, which I wrote trying to work out what the heck was happening to my life back in 1990, called Truth Vibrations. And I called it that because what I was told right at the start was that there was a vibrational change coming that was going to act like basically an alarm clock to a comatose sleeping humanity, and I was going to see a tremendous shift in awareness in my lifetime. And the other thing that I was told it was going to do was bring to the surface all that had been hidden from us. And of course, 21 years ago, there's absolutely no evidence of that at all. But look now. I mean, what do we know that we didn't know 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even a year ago?
Right.
This is breaking. And where I'm going with this in terms of current events is in many, many areas, in wars, in economic collapse, in manufactured geological events. Not that necessarily all are, but some definitely are. And they are throwing everything they can at us, with more to come, to try to get us into a state of constant anxiety, constant fear, constantly worried about what's going to happen next. And what that does, it pulls you into a density. It pulls you into a more dense vibrational, energetic state, consciousness state, and thus makes it more difficult to tune in, to sync with these, what I call truth vibrations, which is basically another information construct that's coming in to replace the old one. We're at the cusp of it. And some people are still tuning into the old information construct on which the whole control system is based and all the enslavement of humanity is based. But others are opening their minds. It's literally that, opening your mind to a greater vibrational state or reality. And then they are starting to tune in to this incoming information construct that's coming in to replace the old one. And therefore, we are seeing this quite demonstrable fork in the road in terms of human perception, where you've got more people are awakening and seeing what they couldn't see before and saying, why couldn't I see it? It's so obvious. Well, because you weren't in that state of consciousness before. And then you've got still the mass of humanity at the moment that is still locked into this the construct, the information construct that we've been dealing with through this last period. And of course, they therefore are caught in basically five sense reality overwhelmingly, and therefore are open much more to the manipulation of that reality, because they're in this world and of it when they're in that mental emotional state.
Right.
Whereas when you start to awaken, your point of observation starts to move, and you're looking literally from the top of the hill, if you like, or symbolically from the top of the hill, instead of actually being in amongst it. And that being the only information that you are receiving to try to get a fix on who you are, where you are, and what's going on in the world. Which is why when people do open their minds and flow with this, they say, why couldn't I see it before? It was so obvious. So the Chinese say, may you live in interesting times. Well, God, they don't have to wish us that, because we do. And, the next few years are going to be extremely challenging and wonderful in so many ways, as these different realities kind of affect people in different ways. But it's not a time for the faint-hearted, mate. That's for sure.
That is for sure. And if you're a newcomer into many of the topics that you've been talking about throughout the years, David, and that we bring up in the program, then it's it's quite a lot to process. It must be kind of a ride, and there's certainly more information now out there, 2011, than it was, in the early days of the internet, or even 5 years ago. In that sense, there's so many websites, so much information out there, and I mean, do you think there is a good way of coping with this then? Because, as you said, David, a lot is being thrown at us, and this is considered in many regards to be an information war as well, a war of of how we perceive the world, pretty much as well. So there's a lot of mud thrown around, a lot of crap thrown around within this field as well, and the alternative and things that are out there on the web, and fake news stories and everything else. So should we be dragged along too much into it, or do you feel that the vibrational changes that you mentioned earlier, those are at the end of the day, kind of the key to align yourself according to?
Well, they are the key, because they're changing the information construct, therefore changing the reality. But you still got to tune into them, because there are alternative realities there still in this cusp, this point of transformation. It's not something that's going to happen on one day, in one month in 2012. This is a process where this new information energetic construct is coming in. But if it came in one fell swoop at the level that it will eventually be, then people would basically get fried, go crazy.
Yeah.
So, back in 1990 or 91 it was, when I had my experience in the stone circle in Peru, when I was hit by an energy for about an hour or more. I mean, for 3 months after that, it's very famous in this country, if you'd asked me my name, I wouldn't have been able to tell you without checking. It was so powerful that it was almost you're almost on the point of going beyond sane, if you like, because it was like so many keys on the computer symbolically were being tapped, so much was being downloaded that the physical forms still got to cope with that. And so this is a process where it's getting more and more powerful, therefore affecting more and more people, because the more powerful it gets, the more it's going to eat away at the density, what I call the bubbles that so many people live in, where they're operating on such a small area of their multi-level infinite awareness that basically, as I said earlier, the five senses is their foundation for how they see everything. And of course, once you're in that state, then where do the five senses look for information to get a fix on who they are, where they are, and what's going on in the world? They look out into the media, out into the education system, out into mainstream science and all that stuff. So once they're in that bubble state and not in a conscious connection, or even an intuitive connection to higher levels of themselves, well, then they become easily programmable. And this is why the control system, Henrik, is now seeking to throw everything, because it knows it's got a job on now, because people are waking up in more and more numbers and seeing it. And you're right, there is so much disinformation being thrown around to try to create diversions and cul-de-sacs for people, even within this whole area of researching the conspiracy and all the rest of it. Sure. And it's like someone said once, they stood in the library at Oxford University, which has kind of unbelievable number of books. And he said, no one could read more than a fraction of these books in a lifetime. The trick is reading the right ones.
That's right. Yeah.
And in terms of this information we're talking about, it's easy to manipulate for many people the intellect, if you like. It can give you names, dates, places, and sound credible, but it can be total disinformation. In fact, as you well know, the best disinformation is not 100% untruth, because that's much more easy to see through. It's like 70-80% true, and then the spin of the 20%, which takes you off the trail. And so it's the intuition, I would say, that we need to be pulling in, that level of us that's connected to that symbolic part of us on top of the hill looking down. The intuition where I know it sounds right, but does it feel right? What do you feel about this? What does your heart say? And I've gone through the last 21 years filtering information like that. One guy said to me once, he said, "You've quoted a disinformer in your book, but you've only quoted the bit that's true. How do you do that?" I said, "Well, I don't know. That felt right. What the other bit didn't feel right." Mm-hmm. And this is the great lost genius of humanity that's been closed down because we have been manipulated into the intellect, the left side of the brain overwhelmingly, which sees everything as apart from everything else. It wants structure. It's about language, and it's ludicrous often version of logic. Whereas when you're in that state, you're easily manipulatable by information given you through the media and repeated by your peers and all the people around you. So you accept a version of reality that's not the right one, but it's one that's you've accepted because it sounds right. Well, they wouldn't do that. Well, no, it must be like that. The scientists say so, and all that stuff. Whereas when you go with your intuition, you're not bothered how many letters some guy's got after his name in some university or some science buddy institution. If it don't feel right to you, you ain't going to accept it. Yeah. And this is the thing I think we've really got to start honing and making more and more sensitive our ability to feel when something feels good, and therefore, this feels right to me. And when it says, "Ooh, no, it might sound right." All the I's might be dotted, the T's crossed, and it might be beautifully set out, and he might seem to see what he's talking about, but it don't feel right to me. And this is the way we can get through this disinformation and these diversions that are put before us.
Absolutely, and it's information. It can be a high as well. It can be kind of a buzz for people, something to occupy, almost a form of entertainment as well. And beyond that, of course, we have. All truths are not going to be documented, and vice versa. Just because something is documented doesn't mean it's the truth there either. Things can be forged and faked and what have you. So I think you're right, David. You have to walk your own path, follow your own heart, and at the end of the day, no one else can tell you what that true path is. It has to be up to you, and it has to be up to everybody out there. And just as long as people do that, I don't see any problems with that or reason to complain even on anybody else. They're free to choose as they go about their lives, David.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things about that, Henrik. First of all, you're right in this sense about the way people are treating some of this information, or many people are treating some of this information, and that is, it's like a hobby. In a sense, it's an add-on to your life, and you go onto forums and I'm not saying having a go at forums. There's a lot of good information that's exchanged, but you go onto forums and you can say this and say that. Oh no, I think this. Oh no, you're an idiot. I know more than you, and all this stuff, and you can read the information, and if that's as far as it goes, then all we are doing is, instead of having the prison built around us without us seeing it, now we're seeing it. And instead of just ignoring it because it couldn't be happening, now we're saying, "Oh, look, see what they're doing now. I bet they do this next," and all this stuff. But that's just fine. It's a step forward. We've seen it. The question is then, what do we do about it? It just sitting on a forum, exchanging views on a thing every day, is that as much as we're going to do, or are we going to get involved? Has it stopped going to be a hobby and start to be the focus of our lives? Because we're at a point now where this control system has moved on to the point where it is really impacting on the most basic human freedoms, and it's on the cusp in many areas, not least economic, where it wants to push beyond that into the realms that we've been talking about all these years of the global fascist dictatorship. Now, we've moved on greatly, like I say, because so many more people can see it, at least levels of it. But to to just watch it and commentate on it and watch our, oh, look, they put another bar up there. Oh, gold, another bar in there. Come on, look, Ethel. I mean, come on. We've got to do more than that. Yeah. And another thing we need to do, which comes from the point you were making, Henrik, is if we are going to understand what we're dealing with, and what is actually happening around us, we have got to suspend the limitations of what we perceive as possible. We need to appreciate that humanity in this period that we call known human history has been in an incredibly suppressed state mentally, and in ways that are just beyond what most people would think was possible. But because we've been in that suppressed state, what we perceive to be the cutting edge of possibility is not, stands back in amazement, the cutting edge of possibility. And if we are going to make judgments on what is happening on the basis of what we believe is possible, i.e., the cutting edge of human possibility in the public arena is where the cutting edge is, then we are going to get nowhere near what is actually happening, because we have been in a suppressed state, and then that which has been manipulating us is light years ahead in terms of its technological know-how. And therefore, when I say things, for instance, I think this is going on, that's going on, you'll get people understandably saying that's ludicrous, that's not possible. No, it's not possible for humans at this point, but it is possible. We have lived in such a tiny bubble of potential that we have no idea of the technological, the manipulation of our sense of reality, what it's possible to do, create, all the rest of it. That is actually not only possible, Henrik, it's going on around us. Yeah. And it's like, a kind of a sheep runs into a field and says, hey, guys, I've sussed it. This is going on. That's going on. That's going on. That's going on. And they, from the point of view of the field, they'd say, that's impossible. You're crazy. And by the way, you're getting on our nerves because we don't want to hear this stuff.
That's right.
And yet, a little way down the road, when the sheep's saying, look, they're going to bring this lorry, they're going to bring this truck, they're going to take us away to the slaughter. Oh, don't be crazy. They'd never do that. Anyway, it's not possible. And then the truck arrives. And they're in the back of the truck going, he was right, wasn't he? Oh my God, it's too bloody late now. And so we have to open our minds to, as Socrates is supposed to have said in ancient Greece, wisdom is knowing how little we know.
That's right. Yeah.
And let the information and our intuition be our guide, and not the great firewalls of, preconceived idea, because we are going to have some real shocks in the next few years when we realize the scale of the control and how it doesn't end with Illuminati bloodlines and secret societies and Freemasons. They are still at the play out level of this. They're not the origin of this control system. They are players out of it, representatives of it. And when you look, Henrik, at all these things that are happening, and what I do is connect the dots. But if you look at the individual dots alone, you've got people who are focusing and researching on the additives in food, additives in water, HAARP manipulating the weather and manipulating earthquakes, etc. You've got people looking at the manipulation of the banking system. You've got people looking at engineered wars. You've got people looking at the pharmaceutical conspiracy, the vaccine conspiracy, all these things, looking at the manipulation of politics. On and on and on it goes. And that it's all happening in this coordinated way. do we really believe that that's being orchestrated by men in dark suits and a few women sitting round a table discussing what do we do next? This has been this conspiracy, this unfolding conspiracy, projects decades and more forward. This is why some people who have had access to the conspiracy, or at least they had information access to it, as on the inside, have been able over the years, like Aldous Huxley and Brave New World, etc., to write these prophetic novels, which have shown now to how did he know that? Because he had access to the projected agenda, and we are going to find that. We as a human race have not only been suppressed, but our reality has been manipulated on a massive scale. The moon's involved, and I have absolutely no doubt that Saturn's involved, and that there were incredible, not millions of years ago, far more recently, incredible events in this solar system that I call in my books the schism, where the planets, as we see them now, were not always where they are now. And absolutely, they weren't there that long ago. And the story that is going to come out of how there is that we are in a universe that is like the cosmic internet, the wireless internet, whereby if you're in a place where the wireless internet is, look around you, where is it? You can't see it. But you get a computer and tune it into the wireless internet, and you, on your screen, suddenly have access to a whole collective reality that people in America, Sweden, South Africa, England, Asia, almost anywhere apart from places like China, can access the same collective reality. And yet a few seconds ago, before you pressed enter, where was it? Now it's on your screen. And what I like very much is this whole area of research regarding the electric universe. Yeah. And on one level, it is electrical. Of course, we have this electrical level of the universe, which is a massive kind of revelation of understanding, in my view, and we have electrical activity in the brain. We have electrical activity in the body in general, electrical activity in the heart. And we are interacting with this cosmic internet, this electrical universe, although there's other levels, vibrational levels and digital levels, but let's talk about the electrical level. And therefore, when that electrical level, which is information, when that changes, our reality changes. And what we are now experiencing in this information transformation that I'm talking about is the information in that wireless internet is changing, in that cosmic internet, as I would call it. And but this brings us to something else. If you're dealing with an information construct, which we are interacting with and bringing through the electrical to the holographic, which is the world we think is physical but isn't, then what can you do with computer systems? You can hack into them. Look at the situation in China. There's vast chunks of the internet, the World Wide Web, that Chinese people cannot access because the system has been firewalled off, so they can't get it onto their screen. What I'm saying is that exactly that has happened on a massive scale, right? Whereby our ability to access great chunks of the information available in this cosmic internet has been firewalled off. And I'm absolutely convinced that all this, see, when you start to put the dots together, things start to make sense. Why are there so many stories, Henrik, among the ancient peoples about genetic manipulation, right? Genetic manipulation of humanity. And what do you do if well, let's take this. What do they do with the computer system in China? They hack into it and they change it so it won't read and access great chunks of the internet. Well, if you look at genetics, you might see cells and all that stuff. But what you're looking at basically with what I call the physical body, the holographic body, what I call the body computer, the biological body computer, you're looking at a system which is reading, like a computer, information.
The code,
And if you then genetically manipulate it, you are manipulating it, if you know what you're doing, to firewall off great chunks of its ability to read the reality to the extent that it should. And I have, I must say, you look at the situation with DNA, where 95 to 97% of DNA they call junk DNA because they don't know what it does. And then you look at the fact that we use a fraction of our brain's capacity. Now, in some ways, some of that junk DNA, I'm sure, is actually interacting with other levels of reality beyond science's ability to measure it. Same with the brain. But I'm sure that some of it has actually been switched off. And it's like putting humans in a situation where they're intelligent enough to serve the hidden masters, but not intelligent enough in consciousness terms to realize that that's what they're doing. And this is why this information vibrational change is awakening people to be able now more and more to actually cope with the concept that that's what's going on. And, I'm sure that Saturn is very much a massive broadcasting operation. And it's, I think, in league with what's coming out of the moon and probably other things too, we don't know about yet, has created what I call this moon matrix, which is like hacking into the system so that we do not either receive or decode a range of information that we would normally do so, or that would give us a completely different view and perception of reality. And if people think that's kind of far-fetched, that could happen. I was reading a really mainstream scientific magazine in Britain a few months ago called The New Scientist. And it was saying that since the American television system switched from analog to digital, scientists are in a race against time before those analog frequencies are sold over to mobile phones and all the rest of it they do, to see areas of the universe, whole galaxies that they couldn't see. And this was the quote in the magazine: prior to the switchover, naturally occurring radio waves at frequencies between 700 and 800 megahertz were obscured by analog TV signals, preventing astronomers from investigating the universe using this band.
That's right.
The freeing up of this bandwidth is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see galaxies in this range. So they, i.e. we too, couldn't see whole galaxies because people were watching the television, you know? And then you take that forward into the realms of technological possibility that I'm talking about in terms of what these ultimate manipulators have, and you start to see that what I've just described about the firewalling off and the hacking into the information construct to stop us getting access to vast amounts of it that we would is perfectly feasible. This is another thing, Henrik, that I saw in a mainstream magazine. Said this: the scientists have conceived of a space-time cloak which manipulates light and, in essence, conceals whole events from a viewer. The theory is based on censoring the flow of events which we perceive as a stream of light particles, also called photons, that strike the retina. By exploiting a characteristic of fiber optics, remember, I'm talking about technology here that's available to humans. Mm-hmm. By exploiting a characteristic of fiber optics, the flow of photons can be slowed, events edited out, and stitched back together, say the team from Imperial College London and Salford University, Northwest England. Quote, a safecracker would be able for a brief time to enter a scene, open the safe, remove its contents, close the door, and exit the scene, while the record of a surveillance camera apparently showed that the safe door was closed the whole time, according to their paper. These so-called metamaterials, whose nanometric surface interferes with light at specific wavelengths, as a result, light deviates around an object, making it invisible, or more accurately, invisible in specific colors of the light spectrum. Now, you take this manipulation of reality into the realms, Henrik, of the capabilities that I'm talking about, and, putting people into what I call this moon matrix or this moon Saturn matrix is perfectly feasible. And the flow of my life over the last 18 months has certainly been putting that information before me.
See, there's so many interesting points in that, but that whole idea of just bending light, that alone, what we could accomplish now. Think if we do have an elite that is 50, 100, 500 years ahead of us when it comes to technology. We have no idea what they're capable of. It takes things into a totally different realm. But one thing I want to get to here, obviously, David, in some more detail, if we can, is about the moon and how you see that is, how you came into some of that information as well. And we can try to tap into Saturn here, because as far as I know, you do not write that much about Saturn in your latest book, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, but in chapter 19, 17, and even 13, you've collected some of the most fascinating research laying out various, anomalies related to the moon, suggesting that it is something that we might not think it is. Maybe you can just give us some of these little tidbits, David, and also let us know how did you get on that trail? What made you look at the moon specifically?
Well, to explain that, Henrik, I just got to briefly explain how I've worked all these years. When I went to the Psychic in 1990 as a TV presenter and national spokesman of the Green Party in England at the time, to be told that I was going to go out on this world stage and reveal great secrets, and I would eventually be world famous for doing this. I would write many books, and I would face enormous opposition, but, quote, they would always be there to protect me, and all that stuff I've written about before. One of the key things right from that first meeting with the Psychic, and I only saw about 2 or 3 times, it said, one of the things that was said to me was, knowledge will be put into his mind, and at other times he will be led to knowledge. Now, from that moment, there has been a recurring sequence in my life for 2 decades. And that is that in the early days, when I was still kind of what's going on, I would be given knowledge through incredible synchronicity of things coming into my life, experiences, meeting people, coming across books, coming across this document or whatever, having this experience. But after a very few short years of that, this other sequence kicked in, and that is, first of all, I get this, if you like, insight out of nowhere, and from that moment, information, like physical information, if you like, regarding that subject starts coming into my life. Mm-hmm. And this happened with the moon, because when I started out to write Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, I was not intending to write anything about the moon. And I came in one morning, must be about 18 months ago now. And I sat down in this chair, and the energy in the room changed. And of course, after 20 years, you get to know the sequence. The energy, the atmosphere changed. And I thought, here we go. And clear as anything through my mind, it just said, the moon's not real. The moon's not what you think it is. And I thought, all right then. because I've been through this sequence so many times, it's like, okay, well, we'll go with this and see where it goes. Mm-hmm. So I put in a few keywords into a search engine, and immediately up before me came a book called Who Built the Moon by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler. So I thought, well, let's make a start. I'll read that. So I sent for it, read it very quickly, and it absolutely was pointing in the direction of what I'd just come through my mind, if you like. And you know what it's like? It very much going back to what I've just been talking about. When you come into this world, you tend to accept that what is here is how it is. This is how things are, mate. This is one reason why, we, the generations who've seen a different world to this one, are very, very important and have a very great responsibility, because we, to some extent, have the ability to see how things were to how they've become. People being born into the world now, all this control and stuff, it's life. This is how it is. Yeah. This is why it's fantastic that so many young people, despite that, have seen through it. But the classic is the moon. The moon comes up. It goes through its sequence every month. And, well, it's the moon, mate. Oh, it's the full moon tonight. Look. But when you start asking questions, whoa, I didn't know that. And first of all, the mathematics between the moon, the sun, and the earth, as documented in this book, Who Built the Moon, are fantastic. As they say in the book, the maths involved in the Earth, Moon, Sun system is nothing less than staggering, and the moon was placed there with the accuracy of the proverbial Swiss watchmaker. And just a few weeks ago, I watched a mainstream scientific program on the BBC. I think it was it wasn't a strand. It was a one-off. Do we really need the moon? And this mainstream scientist, goes on and on about how it's perfectly positioned for its effect on the earth to give us the kind of world we live in. But then she says, but that it is now perfectly placed to sustain life is pure luck, a cosmic coincidence.
Right.
Right. So then you realize, when you start looking at the moon with an open mind, let the information be the guide. As they say in the book, the moon is bigger than it should be. It's apparently older than it should be, much lighter in mass than it should be. It occupies an unlikely orbit, and so extraordinary that all existing explanations for its presence are fraught with difficulties, and none of them could be considered remotely watertight. Because, again, scientific fact, if you play it back, becomes scientific theory that through repetition has been accepted as fact. So you say, well, how does science say the moon was created? Well, they say the moon was created by a kind of Mars-type planet hitting the Earth in its formation period, and a great chunk coming off and becoming the moon, called the Wack theory. When that didn't follow through in terms of the physics and the logic of it, they came up with a double whack theory, where the planet smacked into the Earth and then came back and gave it another smack. And you say, you don't know, do you? That's the fact. Never mind that all scientists say. Well, scientists say a lot of things that have been proved wrong. And then you start looking at the size of it. I mean, it's bigger than Pluto.
There's nothing in our solar system that compares when it comes to satellites. It's a quarter of the size in diameter of the Earth. It's incredible, actually.
2,160 miles in diameter, and some scientists talk about a twin planetary system, not even a planet moon system.
Right.
And then you start looking at what some scientists have said when they've looked at the moon, like a guy called Erwin Shapiro from the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. Great quote. He says the best explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon doesn't exist. And NASA scientists said it seems easier to explain the non-existence of the moon than its existence. And then you start looking at the way the moon has reacted when it's been specifically hit by NASA after they put seismometers up there. And they say that it rang like a bell.
That's right.
And when you look at some of the quotes that they're saying about the moon, you think, well, where are you? Why aren't we pursuing this? Because they don't want us to know that. When they hit it again with an even bigger smack later, it reacted like a gong, according to NASA scientists, the moon. And according to Who Built the Moon, Alan Butler, one of the authors, was told by a guy called Ken Johnson, supervisor of the Data and Photo Control Department during the Apollo missions, that when it was hit the second time, much more powerfully, the moon not only rang like a bell, but the whole moon wobbled in such a precise way that, quote, it was almost as though it had gigantic hydraulic damper struts inside it, you know. And
this must be from the L-Cross mission back in 2009, I think.
Well, they've been playing this out over many years and decades, and you know, as you well know, in around 1970, two scientists from the Soviet Academy of Sciences wrote a detailed article saying that they thought the moon was a gigantic spaceship, and when you also look at what some of the scientists have said with regard to why it vibrates and reverberates as it does and rings like a bell, is the idea that that it might be hollow. A NASA scientist, Gordon MacDonald, said in the early 1960s, that far back, it would seem that the moon is more like a hollow than an homogeneous sphere. And another one, Sean Solomon, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. He said that from the evidence that they'd gathered at that time, it indicated the frightening possibility that the moon may be hollow. And as Carl Sagan, the great cosmologist, said, a natural satellite cannot be a hollow object. And for me, you know, again, when you can go on the internet, on YouTube, and see people like Sergeant Carl Wolf speaking from his experiences when he was a photographic engineer at the Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, of course, CIA, where he talks at the National Press Club, was it in Washington some few years ago, where he's and others are telling of their experiences inside the system, inside the game, if you like, of how they saw things that the public's never been told about. And of course, Sergeant Carl Wolf talked about the fact that he went over to an area in the Langley Air Force Base where he needed to do some repair work. And he was in the area where they were putting together what he called mosaics, you know, like pictures from different passes of the moon, over the moon. And then they were putting them together to make a whole picture. And he said that the guy over there showed him pictures and said, we found a base on the moon. He said, I saw the base on the moon and many other strange structures, like incredibly high, almost like towers, obelisk-like towers and domes and what have you. And other people talked at that event in Washington about how NASA was airbrushing out these things before pictures were released to the public. And it's very clear that there's a lot of activity on the surface of the moon. But what I'm saying, Henrik, is that's one aspect of it, yes. But what's the real key is inside the moon. Because inside the moon is where it's all going on. Of course, there are things on the surface. Inside is where it's going on. And
do you believe then that sorry, David.
Go ahead, mate.
Do you believe that it's are we talking about a technology being, you know, broadcasted, emanated from the moon to planet Earth, or how do you perceive that to?
Yes, absolutely that. Yes, and I think it's connected in that to Saturn. And what I found interesting was a year after this book came out, where I said that the moon was broadcasting a frequency field, which was having two effects: part of it was blocking information we would normally decode. And the other thing it was doing was giving us information to create a false reality. You know, in the Matrix movie, if you change, you know, when Morpheus is explaining the facts of the Matrix to Neo for the first time, if you take the quote and just put moon inside it, you pretty much got where I'm going with this. Because the quote was, the Matrix, what I say, the moon matrix is everywhere. It is all around us, even now in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go out to work or when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. And that's what I'm saying this moon matrix is doing. And like I say, what I found interesting was when I had obviously written the book, it had come out, and just like, I think it was about 2 months ago. It's been out about 9 months now. I got this email from a lady, I think she was in Brazil, and she said, have you read a book called Earth by Barbara Marciniak? Now, I met Barbara Marciniak back in the 1990s. She became well known in that kind of arena for channeling information from what was said to be a Pleiadian source or a Pleiadian consciousness. So that's what was said. And she produced some books. An excellent one, I thought, called Bringers of the Dawn. But the other one, called Earth, I'd not read, even though, funnily enough, I had it on my bookshelf. So what she said was, here's some page numbers. I've just read your book, Human Race Get Off Your Knees. Here's some page numbers. You know, you'll be interested to read this. And this is what those page numbers said. It was a channeled book, and you know, basically explaining what was going on. And basically it was about how a group of people, a large group of people, have come at this time to help make the change and help ease out this control system. Well, this is what it said. The moon is a very powerful electromagnetic computer. The energy from the moon has been beaming electromagnetic frequencies onto the Earth for eons now to maintain the two-stranded DNA. The moon is a satellite that was constructed. It was anchored outside Earth's atmosphere as a mediating and monitoring device, a supercomputer or eye in the sky. Earth must be owned by those who dwell there. However, it is not. You have outside gods, creator energies, who prevent you as a species from having free reign with your kundalini, because the potential of our energy field. The influence of the moon as a main satellite computer affects all of the Earth. The moon's programs have for eons been of great limitation toward human beings. They are repetitive cycles that the moon creates to which you respond. The moon matrix. And when I read that, I mean, it's another thing that happens in this sequence of events, Henrik, in my life the last 21 years. When you've gone with something, often when you've gone with it, and you know, you say, I'm going with this, it feels right to me, I feel this is right, then something will happen often that kind of gives you a confirmation. Yeah. Just says, yeah, see, look, it is right. And that's what I kind of hit me when I read that, because what I've just read from that book, is, as you will know, it's in, what I'm saying in my book. And it was such a powerful kind of confirmation for me that we're going in the right direction here. Not that everything is 100% right. We're trying to uncover something doesn't want to be uncovered. I mean, crikey. But the theme, the direction we're going here, I'm absolutely convinced is spot on.
So there's a number of things here that I want to, address and talk with you about. One thing we could just, I guess, what your theory is or what you feel when it comes to this, because the Earth is estimated, to be around 4.6 or so billion years, and then some of the moon rocks brought back, by Apollo were dated around 5.3 billion years old. So what do you think has happened here? One theory I've heard is that the moon might have actually been sort of towed into place. Another theory is that it might have been built on the spot, like the Death Star or something like that. But where do you stand on that page?
Well, my jury's out on that. My inclination is it's a hollowed out planetoid, but we've got to kind of I think leave that on the boiling pot, because we got to first understand where the level of capability is that we're actually dealing with. You know, I mean, what are these people capable of? I mean, to hollow out a bloody planetoid, I mean, that's fantastic enough.
Sure.
Construct it from scratch, it's even more fantastic. But I tell you what, it's interesting on that hollowing out, you know, because the Soviet scientists who wrote that article saying they believed it was a hollow. They talked about it being hollowed out planetoid, and they explain. I quote in great detail in the book, but they talk about the fact that they say it was hollowed out. And it's interesting. People like a guy called Dr. D.L. Anderson, professor of geophysics and director of the Seismological Laboratory at California Institute of Technology, actually said, because the way the moon's put together, the moon is made inside out. And interestingly, I then called my great friend in South Africa, Creda Mutwa, the nearly 90-year-old now Zulu shaman, who was initiated into this hidden knowledge like 50, 60 years ago. And I didn't say anything to him. I'd come by this point to the conclusion that what I'm saying is the way we're going with this. But I never told him any of this. I just called him and I said, can you tell me any Zulu or African legends about the moon? And he said, yes, we say the moon is an egg. Now, of course, your anthropologists turn up from mainstream science. They go, they're primitive people who think the moon's an egg. Well, actually, that's a bit more than that. The reason they say it's an egg, interestingly, is they say it's been hollowed out. And then he told me one of the Zulu legends about the moon. And he said that the legends say that the moon was brought here hundreds of generations ago by two brothers, Wawani and Umpanku, who were leaders of the Chitahuri. Now, the Chitahuri is the Zulu name for the reptilians, the children of the serpent. And he said that the two brothers, Wawani and Umpanku, were known as the water brothers and had scaly skin like a fish. The legends say that Wawani and Umpanku stole the moon in the form of an egg from the great fire dragon and emptied out the yolk until it was hollow. They then rolled the moon across the sky to the earth and caused great cataclysmic events on the earth when it arrived. And so you look at that, and I, of course I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, whoa, you know, when you're looking at I find it very compelling, Henrik, when you look at these ancient legends and these myths, and then you look at the science that we know anyway, and they start to sync. And there are so many anomalies with regarding the moon. It's too big, too far out to be a natural satellite of the Earth, so they tell us. Why the moon has very shallow craters, and it seems that the depth of the crater does not kind of sync with the size of the impact. And what these scientists were saying, these Soviet scientists, they said the moon had to be constructed to survive going through all the impacts and all the battering that it would obviously get. And he said that they reckon that there's an outer protection covering of about 2.5 miles, something like that, 2.5, 3 miles, something like that. They said in 1970, which is to absorb the initial impact, and then from that 2 miles, 3 miles, whatever it is, outer protection, there is then, they said, a 20-mile, in their estimation, solid, impregnable barrier. And the indication was that when the moon's hit by something, it impacts upon the immediate outer protection,
which is softer, so it kind of muffles the blow a bit, right?
Yeah, but it can't get beyond this this 20-mile impregnable shield, and then inside that, there you have, and probably it was definitely on the surface and at other levels too. You have what's actually going on there, and the technology that's actually shooting out these various frequencies to block information and to give us information which we decode when it's a fake reality, a moon matrix, and it's something that we're going to have to look at, because the evidence is going to continue to come out that's going to make us look at this. I mean, when I was writing the book, Henrik, I turned on the television to see that NASA was bombing the moon. What's all that about? Oh, we want to see if it got water. How much did that cost to bomb the moon to see if it's got water? And then last August, I was with Crater Mutwa, funny enough, in South Africa, and there was a news story, a mainstream news story, where NASA said the moon is shrinking. They found these ridges all over it, which they say indicates that the surface is coming together. It's shrinking and causing the land to rise up in these ridges. There's so many things about the moon we don't know about, and I'm sure that we're going to have to really look at this seriously, at how we're being manipulated via the moon. In fact, have you ever seen that I'm sure you have, that American film called They Live?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, you see, for people that haven't, it's a story that came in the 1980s, but it was set about now, funnily enough, a bit in the future. And to cut a long story short, this guy came across some sunglasses that were specially designed so that when he put them on, he didn't see the world he saw without them. When he put them on, and he looked at a news magazine, instead of seeing text and pictures, he just saw subliminal messages: stay asleep, obey authority. He looks around at the advertisements in the street that are saying, vacation in Jamaica or buy Coke or whatever. And he didn't see the adverts with the glasses on. He saw subliminal messages saying stay asleep, do as you're told, and all that stuff. And then when he goes through an area where there's people, he sees that most people are still human when he puts the glasses on, but some of them ain't, that look human when he hasn't got them on. Some of them are clearly not human. And the story goes on as he starts to understand what's happening, that the world has been taken over by these non-humans hiding behind human form, which is I've been writing about all these years. And they work out that actually the reason humans can't see them, and he can only see them with the glasses, is because, and it's all symbolic, I would suggest, there's a dish transmitting a frequency from the top of a television tower that is blocking the people's ability to see what these people really are. And what they do then is that they the story in the film, they stop the dish broadcasting, and suddenly people are sitting in bars, walking down the street, whatever, and suddenly the person next to them's not human anymore. They can see them because this frequency's been switched off. And that, Henrik, for me, really, really is a fantastically symbolic explanation of what is actually happening. And the thing is this is another key reason, mate, why they have to keep us in a low vibrational mental and emotional state of consciousness. It's because what they're broadcasting has a frequency, yes, but it has a frequency range. And if you open your mind and access levels of consciousness that are beyond that frequency, and this is what's happening with this awakening, its impact upon you is diluted and diluted until you go beyond it. And then not only is it not impacting on you like it was in terms of your sense of reality, you actually are aware, conscious enough to see that it's happening and what's going on.
Yeah.
And we're going to have some amazing kind of revelations coming along in the next few years that are going to just reveal how deep this rabbit hole goes. Now, it's right, and I do it. It's right that we expose the 5 cents level of this conspiracy. Absolutely, I'm doing it all the time, as much as I can. The banking scams and the political scams and the engineered wars, etc. But if we hold it there, we leave it there, then we're only getting a fraction of what there is to know, because that's just, if you like, that's like the movie screen being played out, where we can see it, but it's being projected from somewhere else. And the moon, yes, Saturn, I'm absolutely convinced that is I very well be that the moon is a satellite, a transmitter, if you like, transmitter system for Saturn. I wouldn't rule that out. I'm not saying it is. I wouldn't rule it out. And it's interesting, isn't it, mate? Who's got all these moons?
Yeah,
Saturn.
Exactly. Saturn.
Got more than 60 in it. I was reading today, and I mean, so, you know, these are little bits of information, but they're eventually going to be added to so that we can actually link these dots in an even more profound way. And where does it go from there? You know, when you're dealing with all possibility, where does it end? But we've come a long way in the areas that we're talking here about, Henrik. We've come a long way from it's a few people sitting around a table wanting to take over the world because they're just greedy. Those people do exist on the level that they operate at, but that's not where it's coming from.
Obviously, before we wrap things up here for the first hour, David, let's just briefly talk about your appearances up here in the Nordic countries. You're coming up to Copenhagen. You're coming up to Stockholm, May 8th. Our friend Peter Pettersson from anarchus.se is putting this one together as well. I was at the conference last year in Gothenburg, also put together by him. Really good one. And for people who want to have tickets, obviously, and more information about your lecture in Stockholm on May 8th, again, just go to anarchus.se. I will have this linked up on the website as well. But then you're coming to Copenhagen. Is that before or after Stockholm, David?
Yeah, if people go to my website as well, they'll get all the places I am, because I'm in a lot of places this year. First of all, I'm leaving in a couple of days. I'm going to speak in Germany, in Bavaria. Hey, Bavaria!
How about that? We were there recently. Actually, it's a lovely place. You're not going to Ingolstadt, are you?
No, it's I've been there before to Berchtesgaden to look around that area, but there's so many things have come out of Bavaria. Bavarian Illuminati, Henry Kissinger, the present Pope, Goldman and Sachs. Those families both came from that area, and so it's a very important place. Not least because, of course, it was the fiefdom of the Rothschilds, and that created the Rothschilds when they changed their name from Bauer to Rothschild, Red Shield. And so it's a very important place, Germany. And then I'm going to Rome the next weekend. I'm going to speak there, and then I'm coming to Stockholm.
Quite important city too in the scope of things. Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny the way the two are synced, because I don't select that. You know, people come to me and say, well, we'd like you to come and speak here, and I say, yeah, I'll do it, or no, I can't because I'm doing something else or whatever. But it's interesting that Bavaria and then Rome have synced like that, one weekend after another. Then I go up from Rome to Stockholm. Well, I haven't spoken for a long time. I like Stockholm. And then I'm going down to Copenhagen for the next weekend. And then I'm going to come back and write a book through the summer before heading to Australia and America and then Europe
David.
again.
Jesus, yeah. You are going at it, you know. And but well, I mean, hey, look at the following. Look at the amount of people, and look at even how the mainstream media is attaching your name to certain things now as well. You're getting recognition, I guess, not because the mainstream media is talking about you, but because of the fact that people out there are actually listening and interested in this material, David. That's excellent.
Yeah, for me, it's like, look at the world, you know. And I decided, Henrik, 21 years ago, that I was going for this. It felt right to me. I'm going for it. Some memory was saying, yes, this is what you're here to do. Go for it. And so, this is my life. I don't have anything else in my life apart from my family, and who are grown up now anyway. And this is me. This is me 24/7. And so I'm doing everything that I can to get the information out, because it's a critical time, as you well know.
Absolutely.
Because we're in a situation now where, in many ways, it is an information situation, because information leads to being able to see things in a different way. And what the system wants is for its version of reality, its version of the limited human being, to be accepted, because that allows the few to control the many. And alongside all this information we're talking about and the other stuff we talk about banking scams and engineered wars, the key to it all is humanity remembering who we are, that we are consciousness having an experience. We are not the experience. We are not our name or our job or our family history. We are consciousness having an experience. And when we start to see ourselves from that point of view, consciousness having an experience rather than being the experience, you're already starting to move your point of observation out of the five senses alone. Of course, we still have to stay there. That's what we came here to, we interact in the world with the world through the five senses, but they're no longer the prison, because you're seeing a much bigger picture just by that switch of self-identity. And that is absolutely crucial. And that's what I'm banging out all the time, because it changed my life when I changed that self-identity of myself. And it changed anybody's life, because you're no longer little me anymore.
Absolutely correct. And I also want to say to our listeners out there, if you haven't been to any of David's lectures before, and if you're close to Bavaria or Rome or Stockholm or Copenhagen here a little bit later, do take the opportunity, because it's awesome, and David gets a great opportunity to present all of the information. You're still doing what is it, David? About 6 hours worth, or sometimes even more.
It's going up.
It's going up. Of course it is. Yeah.
No, it's about. I did an event in Los Angeles, which was unbelievable. I mean, it was such a privilege to do that about 3 weeks ago. 2,000 people. The audience were magnificent. The energy was incredible, and it was just a joy. I think I did the best part of 9 hours, so 8.5, 9 hours. I do it in 4 sections with about 1,300 illustrations, and I have to do that if I'm for me, if I'm going to travel a long way and people are going to travel a long way to come and see me, then let's make a day of it.
That's true. That's true.
Let's connect as many dots as we can here. And because I'm a dot connector, of course, you have to talk about the subject and then connect it to this and then connect it to that. So it does take some time. But it's, I love it. And, Los Angeles was a new high for me. I mean, it was just, the best thing I've been involved in.
Wow.
Because as these truth vibrations move and become more powerful and more influential, those that are tuning into them, and of course to come to an event like that you are, then the energy that's being generated by that group of people is just getting more and more and more powerful. It was just a wonderful experience for me that day.
Excellent. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun, and again, hopefully we can achieve something similar over here on the European continent once you're up there as well. But for everyone out there, obviously go to davidicke.com and take a look at the lectures, obviously, if you want to find out some more information about that and get a hold of tickets and so forth. And obviously David's latest book is called Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. It's an excellent read, and I've been just absorbed in much of the information here about the moon. And what we'll do then, David, is that we'll carry on talking about some of this material and hopefully tie in Saturn into this as well. All right, welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with David Icke about the moon matrix, and we have quite a bit of more details here that we want to try to get to. And David, just you mentioned to me here that you found some of the data and some of the information in regards to the Russian scientists and their detailed information about how the moon basically is a spaceship. Maybe we can begin on that note then and move on from there.
Well, they were looking at the fact that when you look at what the moon is and what it's made of and what's been found there and how it reacts, that it was and is a gigantic spacecraft. And they wrote an article in 1970. They were from the Soviet Academy of Sciences, and the article was headed, "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" And what they said is that the outer surface of the moon is extremely hard and contains minerals like titanium. Moon rocks have been found to contain processed metals, including brass and mica, and the elements uranium-236 and neptunium-237 that have never been found to occur naturally. Uranium-236 is a long-lived radioactive nuclear waste and is found in spent nuclear fuel and reprocessed uranium. Neptunium-237 is a radioactive metallic element and a byproduct of nuclear reactors and the production of plutonium. Some lunar rocks have been found, they said, to contain 10 times more titanium than titanium-rich rocks on Earth. Titanium is used in supersonic jets, deep-diving submarines and spacecraft. Harold Urey, a winner of the Nobel Prize for Chemistry, said about this information, he was terribly puzzled by the rocks from the moon and in particular their titanium content. He said the samples were mind blowers and he could not account for the levels of titanium. And the article says by the two scientists this: if a material had to be devised to protect a giant artificial satellite from the unfavorable effects of temperature, from cosmic radiation and meteorite bombardment, the experts would probably have hit upon these precisely what they call refractory metals. In that case, is it not clear why lunar rock is such an extraordinarily poor heat conductor, a fact for which so amazed astronauts? Wasn't that what the designers of this super Sputnik of the Earth were after? From the engineer's point of view, this spaceship of ages long past, which we call the moon, is superbly constructed. If you're going to launch an artificial Sputnik, they said, then it is advisable to make it hollow. At the same time, it would be naive to imagine that anyone capable of such a tremendous space project would be satisfied simply with some kind of giant empty trunk hurled into near-Earth trajectory. It is more likely, they say, that what we have here is a very ancient spaceship, the interior of which was filled with fuel for the engines, materials and appliances for repair work, navigation instruments, observation equipment, and all manner of machinery. In other words, everything necessary to enable this, quote, caravel of the universe to serve as a Noah's Ark of intelligence, perhaps even as the home of a whole civilization, envisaging a prolonged thousands of millions of years existence and long wanderings through space, thousands of millions of miles. Naturally, they said, the hull of such a spaceship must be super tough in order to stand up to the blows of meteorites and sharp fluctuations between extreme heat and extreme cold. Probably the shell is a double-layered affair. The base is a dark armoring of about 20 miles in thickness, and outside of it some more loosely packed covering, a thinner layer averaging about 3 miles. In certain areas where the lunar, quote, seas and craters are, the upper layer is quite thin, in some cases non-existent. And so that's where they were coming from in 1970. And all these years later, I'm absolutely sure that they were on the right lines. Their themes were correct.
Huh. How about that? And there's one story that came up about a year, 2 years ago about a lot of the rocks that were here on Earth that actually have been lost or disappeared, or the rocks that they brought back from the moon. And I wonder if that has possibly something to do. I don't know if there's a conspiracy angle here in terms of the fact that they want to try to hide the real rocks, because some of these, people can do studies on them and find the composition of them and find these anomalies with them. I don't know if that really, kind of means anything in the larger scope of things, but it kind of goes hand in hand, David, with a lot of the stuff about the tapes disappearing, so they say anyway, from the Apollo moon landings and things like that, meaning that they're trying to kind of cover up the things that they did that. But all of this stems back to this idea of why haven't NASA officially anyway been back to the moon? What is going on there?
Well, there's a lot of evidence of over many centuries of strange lights on the moon, of UFO activity around the moon, and of course all these other non-natural things that are on the moon, like the towers and what have you. And so the evidence is absolutely there, even in the public arena, if you look at it, that something very strange is going on there. And of course, NASA, with their insider knowledge of things they don't let us see, they might not know the full story, but because it's very compartmentalized, but from what they don't let us see, they know more than the public do. They must be totally aware of the fact that the moon is not what we're being told it is. And I wonder, Henrik, just how many of these moons exist. I mean, it's no accident that you had the theme of the Death Star moon in Star Wars, which was, of course, produced by an insider, George Lucas, who, I don't think was telling a story of a galaxy far, far away in theme at all. And it's interesting, too, when you look at the Saturn moon Mimas and you look at the Death Star, I mean, it's ridiculous. They're just mirrors of each other. I mean, if you just, anyone wants to go into NetFind and put Mimmoth and Death Star, Mimmoth, M-I-M-A-S, and Death Star in, an image find, and you'll see them put together side by side. And also, there's been talk recently about whether, one of the moons of Mars, Phobos, is actually a spacecraft.
That's right.
And there was a guy in 1963, chief of applied mathematics at NASA, called Raymond H. Wilson, who said, quote, Phobos might be a colossal base orbiting Mars. That was in 1963. And just before, when would it be? Just a few weeks ago, on the Sky at Night, which is the longest running astronomy program in the world. It's on the BBC. They were talking about the findings of the European Mars Express spacecraft, which took some very close pictures of Phobos. And as one of the people in the studio being interviewed said, that the findings show that Phobos is lighter than it should be, could be hollow, and its composition is not like any asteroids or meteorites that we know of. And I just wonder, how many things out there are not what they seem to be. Mm-hmm. Because if we think about it, if you are wanting to manipulate and people not realizing you're manipulating, then it's no good turning up and parking a bloody great spaceship that looks like a flying saucer or something.
That's right.
Where people can see it. It's much better if you, what do soldiers do? They look for camouflage. Why? Because they don't want to be found. They want to be seen. And I sometimes, look at Saturn. I look at its moons, and I wonder really if I'm looking at a car park. It's rather strange that Saturn is the one that I'm being drawn to, and this flow of kind of, if you like, information synchronicity is pushing me more and more towards all the time. And that's the one that's got all these blooming moons. And moons, one of its moons, for instance, like Iapetus, I mean, with that great bloody ridge that's so long and so high, they call it the walnut. I mean, that's got, and of course one side of that is one color, dark, and the other side is white, and that's not reflection, that's the way it's made, and it's like that doesn't look natural to me. In the way that it's just appeared being evolved in the course of millions of years. And again, to really go in the direction we need to go, we have to suspend our sense of limitation. We have to suspend our belief, not that we believe anything just because it's there, but we suspend our belief where our belief is a censor of us looking at something dispassionately. I mean, a few years ago, they found this enormous, NASA announced they'd found this enormous ring around Saturn, millions of miles out, that's so big that I think, is it some fantastic number of Earths would fit into this ring. Some astonishingly great number of Earths would fit into this ring. And suddenly they found a new ring around Saturn, massive, millions of miles out. What else is there to find?
Yeah.
That connects it? Because I see, when I look at Saturn, Henrik, I see a massive broadcasting system.
Right.
That's what I see.
Right.
And they say, that, the rings are full of ice and all that stuff. Well, what if that ice was crystal? I mean,
it's a receiver then, actually, in one sense. I mean, it looks like a satellite receiver. Yeah.
A receiver transmitter. And I'm sure that what the moon is doing is almost like a subordinate to what Saturn is doing. And then, it's no accident, mate, that they named that planet Saturn. After the Roman god Saturn, and who's of course Kronos in Greece, and the same figure under another name is found in Babylon, is found in Asia. I mean, they don't name these blooming planets by accident. If they want to attach to it something, then they'll give it the name that that attaches that, and to attach that, because of course our period of Christmas was the period of Saturnalia in Rome, where they worshipped the god Saturn, and I just wonder whether well, I don't wonder. I'm sure it will lead this way, that the worship of the god Saturn was actually the worship of this planet, because we don't know what's gone before in terms of the information and knowledge that was available to the inner elite in places like Rome, who were setting the people up to worship, give their energy to these various gods. But who were these gods? And I'm sure that the worship of Saturn and then naming the planet Saturn is absolutely not an accident. They're connected, because all the way through history, there's been the mass of the people with one level of awareness and another inner core with a very greater, massively more advanced level of awareness, because they are connect out into this whole non-human group that is feeding them that information, because they are the representatives within this reality on this planet, if you like, of that non-human group. It takes a reptilian form, I would say, in its higher control structure anyway. And I'm sure that we're going to find that things like that the reptilians and greys are in the moon. And I wonder, Henrik, how many people who've said they've been abducted and and found themselves in a spaceship, why couldn't they have been on the inside of the moon?
Absolutely. Well, why not? It actually has been a few number really, really strange accounts that I've heard. Remember, this is years ago, about people who allegedly were taken to the backside, the far side of the moon, the backside of the moon. Right. And in certain cases, very, very weird statements were involved, like, would you like to meet Lucifer? He's on the backside of the moon, kind of thing. It's like, and these were like small kids who were told these stories by, Grace and whatnot.
Well, I think the immediate control structure, because I think Saturn represents a greater control structure, and I think that the Earth has a real history with Saturn going way back. Because I know some people that are researching and communicating this whole electric universe area.
David Talbot, Wallace Thornhill, they've done tremendous work on the mythology of Saturn, that it might have actually been closer to Earth at one time as well.
That's the point I was going to make. And I think they're right. I think that in many ways, Saturn was almost like an alternative sun. And, Saturn, the Dark Lord. What is the astrological thing about Saturn? It's law and it's limitation and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And again, we're throwing little bits of information here, little bits of dots around, but this is going to come together, and we're going to see how these dots connect, because, like I said, in the first hour, what I was told 21 years ago was all that has been kept from us was going to be brought to the surface. Well, we ain't got here and it stops. It's going to go on and on and on. And for us to go with it and, get the benefits of that awareness, we have to suspend belief and our sense of limitation and our preconceived ideas, because we are going to be challenged. I'm up for it, big time, to go into some areas that are absolutely extraordinary compared with what we thought the world was like, and the forces that were in control of it. And Saturn's going to be a big key in this understanding.
Now, do you think that Saturn, maybe even in combination with the moon, might have something to do, well, it has, as you've been detailing already, obviously something to do with the human experience, but I'm thinking even one step further, talking about maybe life, time limitation in terms of longevity, things like that. If we think about the symbolism of Saturn again, it's the black robed Cronus. It's the judge, the lord of
yes, exactly.
It's death, pretty much, right? He has a scythe with him, and he even sometimes the symbol is the hourglass, meaning he's the Lord of Time, Lord of the Rings, right? So
exactly,
could that be it? Could it be connected?
I think all that. As these dots are put together, I think all that is going to come into it. Absolutely, our sense of time. I mean, even look at what the moon does to our sense of time, because of its effect on the Earth. It's affecting our relationship to time. And if it was a satellite of Saturn, as I'm increasingly sure it is in some form, then that would also connect into the manipulation of time. And the manipulation of time is a fantastic, also our sense of time, because there is no time. But I mean, you get a ludicrous situation where you cross an invisible line in the ocean and you go into tomorrow, or you go the other way and you go into yesterday.
Right.
And this is incredible. Our sense, the way our time's been constructed is ludicrous. But and it's just another prison that we're kept in. I mean, look at how time dominates our lives. Is that the time? Oh my God, I must rush. Oh, is that the time? Oh, there's no time, not enough time in the day. Oh, what time? Yeah. What's the time? All the time. This is going on, and it is helping to impact upon our sense of reality and our flow of events. And as when we look at what we call time, it's merely decoding software in a sense. I mean, when you're in a dentist and you don't like the dentist and you're sitting in the waiting room, time can seem to pass very slowly.
That's right.
And or in the dentist chair, even slower. Yeah. But as Einstein said, if you're in the company of a beautiful woman, time can pass very quickly. Why? Because our brains are taking sequences or taking events and decoding them into a sequence. Particularly the left side of the brain does that. And the quicker it makes that sequence move, the quicker time in our experience appears to move. The slower the sequence happens, the quicker, the slower time seems to pass. And what is impacting upon that sequence time speed is our own sense of mental and emotional state, which is impacting on the decoding, way it's decoded. And, so we're locked into this illusion of time, which is in many ways totally impacting upon our age or our aging process, because we observe people going through a sequence, and it's a very short sequence compared with what it used to be before these guys hijacked the show. And we see people go through a sequence of what the Bible calls 70 years and 10. And therefore we can lock into that software, lock into that perception, and therefore follow the software through the program. And for me, in some of these ancient accounts where they talked about humans living what would be today amazing ages, I think they were probably true, because we are capable of staying in holographic embodiment for almost amazing amounts of what we call time. But we don't, because what is happening is they want people in, serving the system, and then out before they've had long enough to suss it. How many people go through their lives, mate, and they get so far along researching a subject, and then bingo, they're out.
Taken out,
and it's like if we lived much longer in embodiment, we would see the cycles much clearer, because we will have seen them play out over a longer period.
And even that, David, has gone, sorry to interrupt, but even that now has gone further in our society, where anybody over, I don't know, what, 35, 40 are kind of thrown out for not being young and hip anymore, if you know what I mean. The wisdom of those who have some experience are being thrown out the door,
Yeah, they're squeezing it, and what they want really is to bring people in, use them in the slave situation of serving this system, which is designed to get so extreme that George Orwell would wince. That's where it's designed to go if we let it, and then get the best out of them for a short time, and then boom, out.
Yeah,
and then other come through, and this is where this whole eugenics thing comes in. In the Human Race Get Off Your Knees, I quote a guy who was a big wig in Planned Parenthood, the Rockefeller eugenics operation, back in 1969. I told the story in detail and then play it out through the book, because he addressed a meeting of doctors, pediatricians, I think, in America in 1969, and he asked them, when he was going to speak, to put down their pens and stop any recording equipment, because he was going to tell them where the world was going to go. And he did, and one person took notes and then went back and wrote them out, and he did a series of interviews before he died, I think in 2004, radio interviews in which he said, this is what this guy said. And it's all there. And one of the things this guy said was coming was to deprive older people of the right medical care, because once they got to a certain age and couldn't be of service anymore, then they wanted rid of them, because otherwise it was just, they were just a burden, basically.
Right.
And what we're seeing now, not least in America and Britain and other places, is this whole thing. We have a thing in Britain now, where if the doctor decides, it's called the death pathway, can you believe? Where if the doctor decides that basically you've had it, and you're close to death, then they can remove drugs, water and food, to make you die quicker. This is official policy. And one lady had this done to her, and her daughter caused a stink, and they put her back on the food and the drugs and everything. And I think it was nearly a year later, or maybe more than a year, she was still alive. And so this whole Obama healthcare business in America is all about the same thing. And so they want to just literally turn us into slaves, where we give the most productive years and then we're gone.
Yeah.
And that's all part of where this is going, more and more extreme. But it doesn't have to be. We can stop it, because this is another important point. Can we stop it alone, given the technology involved? Well, probably not. But we can together on the 5 sense level, absolutely make a vast difference and bring down this house of cards. But in the other levels of this, I mean, we can't fly to the moon, can we? And I was interested in that book Earth, mentioned in the first hour with Barbara Marciniak, one of the other things it said about the moon, and the fact that the moon was had been hijacked by these quote creator gods, and that the people on a planet should have control of their planet, but they don't because of these creator gods. Another thing it said, interestingly, and I've been thinking about this too for years, is that the moon itself, it said, is not the problem. It's a giant supercomputer system, as we would understand it. It's who's got control of it. And it was saying that the people who've had control of it through this period were going to be removed from it. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think it's important to stress that we humans working through human bodies are not the only level. Just as the Illuminati in human form, apparently human form, are not the only level of the conspiracy, neither are we the only level of the solution, the answer. There's lots of other stuff going on. I mean, 21 years ago, who was that told me all that stuff? And the fact that there was going to be a spiritual revolution in my lifetime, there was going to be a massive expansion of consciousness, and an enormous change in the world, and we were going to realize what had been going on. Well, who was telling me that 2 decades ago? Mm-hmm. And from then on, all these synchronistic things in my life come in and put this information before me. That's not just sitting on its backside. That's part of a greater, disembodied level of awareness, as well as probably extraterrestrial, as we would call them, that is also in this process of sorting this out. Like I say, you know, what's happening in the banking system is very, very important to people's everyday lives in this reality. But my goodness me, it's a dot in the ocean compared with what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Good and not so good.
I want to get back to one point you mentioned. You mentioned, as Barbara Marciniak detailed, hijacked by the creator gods. I think that's interesting because there's two ways to look at it here when it comes to the moon. One, we could take this is a good thing, benevolent. When the moon wasn't put in place, the tides started to act in a certain way on the planet, making life possible here. Also, it attracted meteors and cometary debris, other things which potentially hits the moon instead of the Earth, and so forth. So it might be a benevolent thing. Then we have the malevolent aspect of this as well, meaning that when the moon was put in place, either towed here or built in some way, that might have caused a major cataclysm, as you said, kind of causing this schism that you mentioned earlier, David, about creating, almost a traumatized human species in that sense, initiating the whole, collective mind control that has been going on of humanity as well. But do you think that it was put into place by somebody else then, and then later on it was hijacked by the reptilians, basically?
See, my way of doing things is to put the information together, and any information where it's like, is it, isn't it, I put it on the back burner, and I just let it simmer, because I know that eventually somebody's going to come along to point me in a certain direction. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of open to both things, Henrik, in terms of this. I'm not dogmatic on this is how it is, and every detail is as it is. I mean, that's crazy to even think that.
Of course, yeah.
But what I'm saying, I'm extremely confident, more by the day, of the themes. But some of the detail, like the question you rightly put, that's on the back burner for me. Because although you can look at ancient accounts and ancient myths, they're not necessarily 100% accurate, but what you're looking at is confirmation of a theme.
Right, the gist of it is there.
The gist of it, the theme of it. But it doesn't mean that they're 100% right. It doesn't mean that Barbara, brilliant I think as she is, was necessarily getting 100% right of that. But the theme is there again. And I think with as we move along with this, and as we open our minds to it and let more stuff in, then we are going to have some of these detail questions answered. But at the moment, yeah, it's like I'm open. It's on the back burner. Is it a planetoid hollowed out? Is it a total construct? I'm I wouldn't be dogmatic and say one or the other yet, but that knowledge will come. What I do think also, though, Henrik, is this genetic manipulation. I think a lot of it was done in the moon, and from genetically modifying the human genetics and all that stuff. And it was interesting for me when Credo Mutwa was talking about Wawani and Mpanku, and the way that they came in the moon and all that stuff from the Zulu perspective anyway, and that they were leaders of the Chitahuri, and they were known as the Water Brothers. Now, of course, the Sumerian stories of the Anunnaki say the Anunnaki were led by two brothers, Enlil and Enki. And certainly Enki was given symbolism to do with water. And so it's interesting to me that that theme you find in the Middle East there, right at the north of Africa, and it's also the same theme is being told using different names in southern Africa. I think there's so many of these areas which are at the moment are still dots. That's interesting. We're going to see how they connect into a coherent story. I also think that the schism I talk about, which created devastation on Earth, was part of a much greater incredible series of events in the heavens where the planets went walkabout. And when you look at this perspective from the electric universe way of looking at things, which I think is absolutely right, then when certain forces change, electromagnetic forces, electrical forces, then planets could go walkabout. Yeah. Because suddenly the what they've locked into in terms of their stability and their orbit suddenly, gone. And suddenly they're off. And
look at Tom Van Flanderen's detail about the exploding planet hypothesis as well. We have this belt, obviously, of where a planet, should be, as it were, in comparison to the ratio of the other planets in our solar system. So something might have happened there as well, connecting with these things, David.
I'm sure that was part of it. And wherever you go around the world, like again with Credo Mutwa and the Zulu legends in South Africa, they say there was a planet there. There was a planet. Was it between Mars and Jupiter? And this we're starting now to get the sort of information and more open minds to process that information that are pointing some very, very common themes. I mean, Velikovsky, right? Manuel Velikovsky didn't have every detail right, but my goodness me, I think his theme was spot on, and to do it when he did was absolutely a round of applause. But now we're being able to add to that with more detail. But even then, there's so much more to know, but we're going in a direction that's very clear.
Absolutely. And it's amazing. In most cases, it seems like some of these, old guys that were doing the research in the early days, like Velikovsky, were also kind of tapping into something. They were just more on the trail of an intuition-based, knowledge trail, if you will, in that sense, because it certainly is incredible. Now it's like evidence, the physical evidence is being added more and more and more to their kind of work. But, another detail here I want to ask you a little bit about, David, is obviously the electromagnetic influence, as you mentioned before. We have blood in the human system, hemoglobin being rich in iron. There is a connection with magnetism right there. We have the menstruation cycle, obviously, of women connected with the moon cycle as well. Water and even salt, I think you detail actually, as well as an conductor, if you will, in the human body. Let's talk a little bit about some of these themes and how influential you think the moon is on every single little detail in terms of our lives, David. I mean, it's there all the time. It's affecting us all the time. We have obviously more increase when we have a full moon etc. But blood, salt, water, everything affects it, right?
Yeah, and it must do. It also has an effect on the endocrine system and human hormonal activity. And of course, this is one of the things I go to in the book, part of the endocrine system of glands is the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, which kind of work inside the brain as part of this third eye, this sixth sense. And if you shut that down, then people do not have exactly what we've been discussing in the last couple of hours. They do not have the same sensitivity to get beyond the five senses. Neither is it an accident, because all these things, all these dots connect in the end. No matter how unconnected they may appear, it's no accident that fluoride that they put in the water calcifies the pineal gland. It's all connected in keeping us in this frequency prison, which is what it is. And, you know, in the They Live movie, like I said earlier, where eventually the broadcast transmission is stopped and suddenly people are seeing people next to them are not human, and they're seeing all these subliminal things they couldn't see before. When this frequency fence, this moon matrix, is switched off, we are going to be staggered at what is there to be seen that we can't see, and what we are seeing that is nothing more than a manufactured illusion. You see, when you are at a hypnotist stage show and he's making someone think that someone's naked in the audience, or there's an elephant in the audience, or suddenly there's a terrible smell under their nose when there's nothing there, or they eat a potato but think it's an apple. Right. What is happening? The hypnotist is hacking into the decoding system of the stooge, so that when information comes to the five senses, whether it's the taste of an apple or the smell or whatever, it is sent to the brain as electrical information. And then the brain decodes it, different part of the brain for different senses, decodes it, and then we smell, and then we see, and then we taste. Now, if a hypnotist can do that in a stage show and manipulate the way someone decodes and therefore experiences reality, then imagine what could be done if broadcast frequencies were being sent from technology and technological awareness beyond our understanding, that we were actually picking up and decoding. Blocking frequencies that we decode as things we experience when they're not actually bloody there. All this becomes possible. And the more, Henrik, that I go down this road, and I'm going down it faster and faster, the pieces are starting to come very, very quickly at the moment. And we are going to see that the Matrix movie version of the manipulated reality is very, very close to what we are experiencing. There's much more of the universe that we're not decoding and therefore seeing, experiencing. And also, there's so much information we are decoding that's actually just there to manipulate our sense of perception. And you know, I wonder this. There's the symbolism in They Live of, because of this broadcast frequency, they couldn't see that a significant number of people that look human weren't human. Well, I just wonder if the reason that we don't see so much activity involving these, I would say, reptilians and greys and all that stuff, is because the moon matrix is blocking our ability to decode within the frequencies that they operate in. And once upon a time, we could do that before the genetic manipulation, the firewalling off. And therefore, it's almost the perfect kind of crime, if you like, where you control the lives of now billions of people. You turn them into your slaves, not least because, you know, the moon needs servicing in terms of resources, right? So that's there's resources going from the Earth to the moon all the time. I'm sure of it, because you know they need that, and there's so much activity going on outside of our ability to decode it. And I think that long ago, before the genetic manipulation, humans could decode it, and they could see these people. Maybe some of the ancient accounts were based on the fact that they could be seen there. The gods lived among them. But nowadays, we're not decoding that frequency range, so we don't see them. I mean, you know, I know people who are really feet on the ground people, really grounded people who have experienced, one of them in France, of something coming in the form of just a bright light going incredibly fast and went straight into the earth, straight through into the earth. Why? Because it wasn't on the same frequency. It could go in to the earth because it was not in that frequency range. And he's convinced it was, and in fact, someone who was giving him information at the time confirmed it to him. These were ships, because they have the ability to, we call them ships. They are vehicles for travel, if you like, because they have the ability to move in a certain frequency and then move into this one. So they can go into the earth, and I'm sure we know there are non-human and human, non-human interactive bases within the earth. They can enter the earth in an energy form, without having to actually come as what we call a UFO or a ship.
Right. Yeah.
And in this way, there is, I'm sure, enormous interaction which we don't know about between the Earth bases, and the moon. And you know, when you look at the number of sightings that there have been on the moon of strange activities and UFOs and strange lights and stuff, we ain't talking about 25 people. We're talking about very significantly large numbers of people. Nothing like the 7 billion humans, but still a significant number of people. And that civilization, which I say is going on in the moon, it has to have the resources it needs. It has to do all the things that it needs to do, and it needs to get the resources for it from elsewhere. I wonder if this whole thing about gold is not something that is required in the moon. That's
right. I mean, obviously, there's so much gold that have been taken from the planet, been taken from the reserves that we thought we had. You know, even under the freaking World Trade Center towers, there was a huge amount of gold just disappeared. You know, on that day.
And Henrik, who has been the prime family behind gold? The Rothschilds. Yeah. And the Rothschilds are as powerful as they are, because they are very, very close and interact with this non-human race. In fact, they probably are this non-human race in human form. And so, yes, I talk about that in theme and just asking questions in Human Race Get Off Your Knees. What's this thing about gold? The Anunnaki and gold.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Rothschilds controlling gold. Then you've got all this gold going missing. And these stories, some of which have made one or two mainstream sources here and there, where they've found that actually these apparently gold bars are actually tungsten with a coating of gold.
That's right. The fake gold bars. That's incredible.
Once again, mate, we're picking up these different bits of information, like in regard to this subject now, but the information's going to come where we're going to connect the dots, and these dots are going to connect into the moon. They're going to connect into all these other things that all these other subject areas that are part of the same massive tapestry of manipulation and exploitation.
Yeah. We might be looking at then, David, a kind of a co-joint, if you will, off-world, colony, if you will, on the moon, maybe partially human and partially alien or reptilian, whatever you want to call it. But that gives some credence to this idea about that there is a secret space, program going as well, and the fact that, I mean, NASA even have an official secret shuttle going somewhere, doing some kind of missions. The X-37B, it's been spotted by amateur astronomers several times now. We don't know. That could be going to the moon for all we know.
Yeah, and they've got technology way beyond the shuttle.
Right, of course.
When they say they went to the moon for the first time in '69, I'm not sure that the true story has been told about that. But certainly they've been going to the moon for a long time in much more advanced technology. I mean, that's all in many ways part of the smoke screen. It's part of this is the limitation. This is the cutting edge of technological potential, right? Mm-hmm. Well, they're flying around in things way beyond that. And are they even having to fly around? I'm picked up stories over the years of what you might call beam me up Scotty technology, where they're moving people off planet to bases elsewhere. Mm. One talked about a base on Mars that he claims to have visited. Well, we don't know that he says that, but he certainly was describing that the way it was done was along the lines of actually demanifesting and then remanifesting. And this is why we have to open our minds, not to accept it just because someone says it, of course not, but we have to open our minds to the fact that things are going on around us that are far in advance of anything we think is possible. And we're going to, like I said right at the start of this chat, mate, we're going to have some real shocks and surprises in terms of people that haven't researched this, enormous shocks and surprises when they realize what's been going on, because it's coming out. It's meant to come out. It's part of this transformation. They can't keep the lid on it. Not indefinitely. They can't. And when you think, as we were saying earlier, what we know now that we didn't know 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, what are we going to know 5 years from now? Mm-hmm, that's right. And it's in this period of five years and then on some, that some major shocks in many areas, experiences, challenges, and also, oh my God, so that's what's been going on. And it's going to be an amazing time.
Absolutely. And it's accelerating all the time, not only the gathering of the information, but, the way it can be accessed as well. But we're going to begin to wrap things up, David, for this time. But I want to ask you a little bit about this. And this is kind of one of the tricky questions again, in terms of you're not in a position to know, but I want to ask you about your intuitive, feeling about this. The they live style, hypnosis that is being beamed, if you will, at us, that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Do you think that this will go off, if you will, because it is going to be turned off, or is there something in us that is going to change, allowing us to bypass this frequency? What do you think, David?
I personally, I think both. In the shorter term, it's probably our challenge to expand our awareness beyond its influence. You're still going to be influenced to an extent, but nothing like before. And what happens is, it's like being in a fog, and then sticking your head above the fog. Suddenly you can see what's beyond it. But humans basically are living in a fog of bewilderment caused by this. Interestingly, only 3 or 4 weeks ago, I came across this quote by Gurdjieff, the mystic, very well known. And this is what he's supposed to have said in 1916. All movements, actions, and manifestations of people, animals, and plants depend upon the moon and are controlled by the moon. The mechanical part of our life depends upon the moon. It is subject to the moon. If we develop in ourselves consciousness and will, and subject our mechanical life and all mechanical manifestations to them, we shall escape the power of the moon. That is basically what I'm saying here, and what was saying earlier. We can expand our consciousness, so we're accessing levels of awareness, perception, and observation that are beyond the moon matrix. At which point we can see through it. So that's one way. But I do strongly feel that, in this multi-leveled thing that's going on, the nice and not so nice, that what is coming from the moon is going to change. And it's going to change in line with this whole transformation that we're going through from the period of suppression, control, imposition, and enslavement, which is what? Mental enslavement, which becomes physical enslavement because we enslave ourselves. And we're moving into a period of expanded consciousness. And